Good Chodesh, a friend from Hanukkah. Please take your seats for the final lecture of the series of this year's Hanukkah program, Yakikala program. And please just allow a moment or two after the lecture is over so I could deliver a vote of thanks. So it'll be just about 2 minutes after the lecture is over. Okay, so we have the grand finale of the series of how to live a life of bitachon, trust in Hashem, stress-free, without being stressed, but realizing that we are all very blessed. Rabbi Avrohom Jackson.
Oops. Okay. We have arrived at the last in our session. But don't worry, you could bring me back next year too, because we do have Rabbi. So today's lecture is called From Fear to Freedom, and it is the closing remarks. For those gone through over the last 6 days, the peace framework, as I call it, the peace system. And today, I want to close with some thoughts on bitachon, and also, really probably the most important part of the entire lecture series, some practical tips that we could go away with to implement many of the things that we have been discussing, many of the topics that we've been discussing, to make them practical. So the Or Sameach, Reb Meir Simcha Dvinsk, there was a very interesting case came before him. And the case was that there were these two gentlemen. One of them was a beautiful tzaddik, a wonderful human being. Everybody respected and loved this person. And the other one was a ganef, a lowlife, not so well respected at all. And they come before the Or Sameach. He was a contemporary of the Rogatchover. They lived in the same city as the Rogatchover. They came in front of this great rabbi with the following issue. The issue was that both this beautiful tzaddik and this ganef, they had both bought lottery tickets at the same time for the same lottery. And the ganef was thinking, as a Yiddish cop, and he's thinking to himself that tzaddik deserves to win. I don't deserve to win. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break into the tzaddik's home. This is my profession, I know how to do that. I'm going to break into the tzaddik's home, and I am going to switch tickets. I'm going to give him my ticket, and I'm going to steal his ticket because his ticket is for sure the winning one. So he breaks into the house, he switches the ticket, he goes out, he's happy with himself, and the ticket wins. Not the ticket he stole from the tzaddik, the one that he gave to the tzaddik. His ticket wins. So he runs to the rabbi. How's the chutzpah, right? He runs to the rabbi, takes this guy to a din Torah, and he says, really, it's my ticket. I bought that ticket, and I left it in the home of this tzaddik, and he won, but really I won. So I want to claim the ticket. I want to claim the prize money. So the Or Sameach says that the tzaddik can keep the money. He has the winning ticket, he can keep the money, because the thief is making a fundamental error. He thinks that it is the lottery ticket that wins. He doesn't understand that it is the merit of the person and their bitachon that wins. So had he not switched the tickets, the one in the possession of the tzaddik would have won anyway. Remember, we discussed the Baal Shem Tov, and we said that the Baal Shem Tov came down from the forest where he was living, and he knocked on the door of a house that was on the edge of the shtetl, and then he left. And the man came and opened the door, and he saw the Baal Shem Tov walking away, and the man runs after the Baal Shem Tov to tell him what he wants, to ask him what he wants. And he says, I'm hungry. It's Shabbos, I need food. So he said, so why didn't you stick around? He said, because I had to do what I had to do, the minimum amount. I did that, and the rest is up to Hashem, and you see Hashem pulled through. You ran after me. That's how bitachon works. When you have absolute bitachon, when your reliance on Hashem is so absolute, is so total, then Hashem, as we've discussed many times over the last week, Hashem gives you what you need. But you still have to knock on the door. You still have to come from the forest and you have to knock on the door. You don't have to stick around, but you have to knock on the door. That minimum effort you require. So there's an incredible tshuva, responsa of Reb Moshe Feinstein. That's a picture of Reb Moshe up there. And a person by the name of Rabbi Rotman writes a letter, a question to Reb Moshe Feinstein. The question is fascinating. He wants to know which life insurance he should buy. How many of you asked your rabbi which life insurance you should buy? So there's two life insurance that he describes to Reb Moshe. The one pays what's called a living benefit, which means you pay into the insurance, you pay premiums every single month, and Reb Moshe mentions the amount, $400. I guess in those days, it was a significant sum of money. I believe it was in the 1950s. And he pays $400 a month. Then when he turns 65, the insurance starts paying him out, right? Or he could go, that's option A. He could go for option B. What's option B? It's called death benefits. That's normally, I think, how most people think about life insurance. It's about death. Life insurance is about death, which means that when the person passes away, a lump sum is paid to their family, to the wife and children. And the man wants to know, the premiums are about the same. Should he invest in the living benefits type style of insurance, or should he invest in the death benefit type of insurance? So which insurance should you buy? The second one, the death benefits. How many people think death benefits is the one to buy? Okay, and the living benefits? Okay, so living benefits have it.
None of it.
What? Oh, so Reb Moshe deals with that. He asked maybe none of them. Reb Moshe deals with it in this tshuva by referring to another response that he had written, where he discusses if buying insurance is a contradiction to bitachon. And he summarizes in this response, he summarizes what he had written earlier, that it is not a contradiction to bitachon. Why? Because as we've had occasion to discuss numerous times during the last week, Hashem has commanded us to go and earn a livelihood. Now, earning a livelihood could mean showing up for work on time, definitely, and that is a mitzvah. Hashem requires you to show up, work on time, to try and do your work diligently, to get promotions, to get paid, to start a business, to run the business in a responsible manner. Hashem commanded you to do it. That's not what's going to make you wealthy. Hashem's blessing makes you wealthy, but Hashem commands you to take the action, to do what you're supposed to do. So Reb Moshe says buying insurance is taking action. That's all it is. It's the effort that you expend to generate a parnasa. And since it is well established that people buy and purchase insurance products, there is nothing that contradicts bitachon. You have to understand that it's not the insurance product that's going to look after your family after your passing. It is Hashem's blessing, but Hashem said that you have to buy insurance products. That's what Rav Moshe says. So back then he turns his attention to the question of which insurance product is the appropriate product to purchase. So it seems that the consensus in the room is that you should purchase the death benefit, right? Not the living benefit. Was that? Yeah. So Reb Moshe quotes a Gemara, fascinating Gemara, in Nida Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, I believe. The Gemara says like this: the Hebrew word for a man, a male child, is a zachar, right? And for a female, it's nekeva. And the Gemara says zachar stands for zeh kikarei b'yadai, which means this person, this child, this male child that was born with its parnasa, with its bread, with its dough, provided to it automatically. Nekeva stands for, says the Gemara, nikia ba le'olam. She comes free, clear, clean of any parnasa. So a male child is born with an allotted portion of livelihood that he will make over the term of his life, and that will be enough to sustain him. And every human being is born with that. Every human being is born with the potential to earn all the money that they need to keep body and soul together in this lifetime. And, by the way, to provide for their family, says Reb Moshe. Women are not born automatically with that. They can, Rashi says on the spot, that they can generate their parnasa, they can generate their livelihood through prayer and bitachon. So if they have absolute bitachon, they can change the natural order of things, and a woman can earn, especially in a knowledge economy, women can easily out-earn men, right? There's nothing stopping. Back in the day, when you made your money through brute force, so men have greater physical strength than women, they were better breadwinners. But today, that is not necessarily true, and the Gemara says it was always not necessarily true, because a woman could pray, and through her prayer, through her bitachon, she could actually have, but it's not a natural default guarantee. The guarantee is on this side of the mechitza. The guarantee is that the men will earn enough parnasa to sustain themselves and their family throughout their lives. Not so with the women. But the woman could be sustained by the men. And the man's allotment will be enough to suffice for his entire family. So Reb Moshe says, based on that Gemara, you should buy the death benefit. Why? Because while you are alive, while the male is alive, while the husband is alive, he will be given everything he needs from Hashem to support himself and his family. So while he's alive, they don't need anything. Once he passes away, the conduit for them to earn their livelihood is taken away. And so therefore you should make provisions by buying this life insurance so that when you pass away, it will automatically go to the woman. I just want to say one thing, by the way. The Rebbe often quotes various Mamarei Chazal that show that our parnasa comes through the male parnasa, the channel is through the woman. So in the merit of the woman, the man gets his parnasa. But I think that might refer to luxuries and things that are more than the bare minimum. The bare minimum every man is born with, but not necessarily every woman. But through her father and then her husband, she could receive that bracha. Okay, so that is what Reb Moshe paskins to this person. Then Reb Moshe asks a question. He doesn't like the ratio of the payout to, you're paying $400 a month, and then at the end you get $50,000. And Reb Moshe said, sounds a bit fishy. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. So he says, just explain to me more the details of the benefits, and if there's any conditions on which they won't be paid, and then I might change my mind. But other than that, this is my opinion. And I think that this is a really interesting perspective and approach to the whole question of how much we have to exert ourselves versus how much we can just sit back and rely on bitochen for everything to be provided for us. Another very interesting letter. A gentleman, a rabbi, a shochet, writes a letter to the Rebbe. And it's an interesting question that he asks the Rebbe. He's just lost his father. His father has just passed away. And he's a shochet in a city where there is no regular minyan. There's no minyan where he could daven every single day. So, on the one hand, he needs his parnasa. He earns his parnasa by being a shochet. But the place where the shechita is away from a Jewish city, like a place which is built up, has a Jewish infrastructure, and so he won't be able to say Kaddish for his father and daven for his father because, or he has to give up his parnasa. So what should he do? This is what he writes to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responds, and the Rebbe, very interesting response. The Rebbe says, first of all, the Rebbe says that you can stay in the place where you are shochet. You can stay there because you have brothers, and your brothers can say Kaddish for your father. That's number one. Number two, the Rebbe says, the man said to the Rebbe that he owes money for the funeral. So the funeral was paid through debt. And the Rebbe quotes the Gemara in Kiddushin, where the Gemara says that it's a very, very important thing for the soul to be able to rest, that you should pay any debts that belong to the Chevra Kadisha, the burial society when they bury you, so there's that as well. And then the Rebbe quotes the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, a most fascinating halacha. So let me tell you this halacha. It's very, very interesting halacha. The law is like this. You're allowed to travel on a boat on Shabbos. However, because it takes some getting used to being on a boat, I once went, there was a group of people from my work, and they took us, and we went for a conference in Miami. And they said, and this sounded like such a good idea at the time, they said, let's go deep sea fishing. Deep sea fishing. It's like, okay, deep sea fishing. I should have known it sounded fishy, but I didn't. Oh my goodness. That little boat rocks. Those waves are taller than the boat, right? So the whole boat is rocking. I got so sick. I spent the whole time over the railing. It was terrible. Anyway, so it takes some getting used to a boat. I can tell you from personal experience that this is true. So the halacha says, because it takes some time to get used to a boat, you're not allowed to enter a boat within 3 days before Shabbos, because it's going to impact your oinek Shabbos. It's going to impact the joy that you'll be able to derive, the pleasure that you'll be able to derive from Shabbos, because you'll be on the boat and everything's new and you could be nauseous, seasick, and so therefore you need a certain period to get used to the boat. So Oineg Shabbos is a big thing. It's a big thing. And the halacha says you can't get on the boat, you have to get on the boat at least 3 days before Shabbos so that you could get your sea legs beneath you, as they say. So the Alter Rebbe says in Reish Mem Ches, in chapter 248, the Alter Rebbe says, subparagraph 12, the Alter Rebbe says over there that if you are traveling for business, if you are traveling because you need to earn a livelihood, not just the very basic necessities, but even luxuries, even profit beyond what you actually need to keep body and soul together, it is a mitzvah to do that. It is a mitzvah to support your family. So if you are traveling on a boat, and you're doing so because you are doing business, not pleasure, but business, then you are allowed to get onto the boat. The Alter Rebbe rules, you're allowed to get on the boat, even within 3 days, even Erev Shabbos, the day before Shabbos, you're allowed to get on the boat. Because the mitzvah of supporting your family is more important than the mitzvah of Oineg Shabbos. Okay? So the Rebbe quotes that, and the Rebbe says, based on that Alter Rebbe, since you being a sheikhet is supporting your family, that's how you support your family, you should continue to support your family through that profession, even if it means that you're not going to be davening for the whole year for your father and saying Kaddish for your father. And the Rebbe also says you could get somebody who's not a family member to say Kaddish, but in your case, it's actually your brothers who would be saying Kaddish for your father, and therefore it's allowed. So that's the halachic part of the letter. The Rebbe has responded and ruled a halachic ruling for this chap, this fellow, this sheikh. But then the Rebbe switches gears. The Rebbe also says whenever you daven, even if you daven Nochlet Minyan, you should always give tzedakah. And when you give tzedakah, you should have in mind that it's for your father's, the aliyah of his neshama. And the Rebbe also says over there that he should bench with a mezuman. So a mezuman is three men, so 3 people sitting down. You should bench with a mezuman, and you should lead the benching as often as you possibly can. So those are the things that you could do, and if you do that, you don't have to be saying Kaddish for your father, since your brothers are saying Kaddish for him. That's the halachic part of the letter. Then the Rebbe switches gears, and the Rebbe says, I do not know your level of bitachon. I do not know your bitachon mindset. Do you have a bitachon mindset? Do you not have a bitachon mindset? I don't know where you're holding when it comes to your bitachon. But if you have strong bitachon, the Rebbe says, then go leave your job, leave the work of being a sheikhet, move into the city, daven with the minyan, say Kaddish for your late father, and the bitachon will ensure that you will replace your parnasa and you won't lose out financially. But this I don't know. I don't know where you're holding in bitachon. But if you have the bitachon, then you have the promise that going to the city, you won't lose out on your, you won't lose out. Another thing is that the Rebbe encourages us, indeed the Torah encourages us, but the Rebbe certainly has numerous very inspiring sichas telling us that we should have large families, the blessing of large families. So 7 years ago, to the day that I arrived in Melbourne, I left Melbourne. And I left with my family, and I heard with my kids. And, you know, I don't think my family is a very large family compared to some of my friends have larger families than I do. But I remember we were leaving the airport here in Melbourne, and I had my passport, my wife's passport, and my 7 kids' passports. So that's 9 passports in total, if you're counting. We don't count these things. We don't count passports. That's how blessed. So I handed a stack of passports to the officer, and he was like, "Whoa!" And he calls over his friends, the other officers. He says, "This is all one family." I hear him whispering. He says, "One family looks all Jack's, all the same family." He was blown away that there could be such a large family. Kenan Hora, because they're not used to the average family is like what, 1.4 and a dog or something? Is that 1.4 kids and a dog? I'd like to see the 0.4 kids, by the way. I've always wondered about that. What's the 0.4 kid? Anyway, so a lot of people struggle, the reality is, with having large families because of the expenses that come from those large families. But if you look at the Rebbe's Sichos, where the Rebbe spoke about large families, it's an act of absolute bitachon. And when you have that absolute bitachon, and you have those large families, Kenan Hora, Hashem provides. And he does. I was speaking to a lady, she's a religious woman in Toronto, and her job is, she's a headhunter. She finds jobs for people. And she told me that her non-Jewish clients, the majority of her clients, they very into culture. They'll ask her if there's an opportunity, they'll say, "What's the culture like? Do they have ice cream Tuesdays and, foosball to play with during breaks? And do they have showers on prem?" They have these things. And they'll gladly take lower salaries if the cultures are fit, right? She says her frum clients, much less frum clients that she has, but her frum clients that she finds jobs for, they couldn't care about culture. She said, no frum man ever asked me about the culture of a company, ever. They asked, how much is the salary? Can you get more? Do you think there's room for negotiation? We're too busy to care about culture and everything. We're raising kids. We're paying tuition. We just give me the most money possible. So it's interesting. In the end analysis, yes, kosher food is more expensive than lahavdil non-kosher food. And yes, tuition is like tuition. I don't know if there's any parents in the room, any parents? You know what I'm talking about? But in the end analysis, the act of having large families brings treasure and blessing into our lives that cannot be equaled with mere money. I have a friend and he said, my parents were fantastically wealthy, just not in a financial sense. And that's the truth of it. Families are a leap of bitachon. To have a large family is a leap in this world today, is a leap of bitachon. And those that do never regret it. And the amazing thing is, Hashem provides for everybody. It's unbelievable. So these 1.4 people and their dog can hardly make ends meet. And our larger families, somehow, we send them off to overseas seminaries and yeshivas, and we marry them off in elaborate weddings, and we do it, and how does it work? I don't know. It's miraculous. It's bitachon. Okay, so now I want to scare you a little bit, because my book is called Stress Less, Prosper More, How to Conquer Financial Anxiety. So just in case I haven't pushed the book well enough, I'm going to increase everybody's anxiety now. You ready? I'm going to make you really anxious. But I don't, that's not my intention. I don't intend to make you anxious. I intend to get you to the point of bitachon. But I want to start with a little bit about the world that we live in today and some very interesting things that are happening in the world. And it's about technology, and it's about reimagining humanity. So one of the greatest technologies that was ever invented, one of the most important, impactful technologies, was the printing press, books. Books are an incredible, we don't think about it as technology, but they were technologies. And let me show you a little bit about what happened with books, and you'll see that books define a very definite pattern that every single technological advancement that humankind has made will follow the same pattern. So the person who invented the printing press was a guy by the name of Gutenberg, And he invented the printing press in 1440 in a place called Mainz in Germany. And the total world population of printing presses in 1440 was one, the one that Gutenberg created. I'll tell you something really interesting while we're on this subject. You know that in Jewish law, we have what are called Rishonim. We have the Gemara, everybody knows the Gemara. Then there was a period called the Geonim. Then we have the Rishonim, and then after the Rishonim comes the Achronim. Do you know where the demarcation line was? That anyone who comes before that is a Rishon, anyone who comes after that is more or less an Achron. You know what the demarcation line, you know what the year was? Guess the year. 40, how do you know? 1440, what? It was in 1440. The printing press created Achronim, and I'll tell you why. Because before the printing press, there was only one way that you could get hold of a book, and that was you had to have somebody sit down and handwrite it. So they only let the best stuff go through. They only let the best stuff go through. They did not let things that were less than sterling. And so therefore, only the Rishonim were so great that the Jewish people felt it was worth copying their books. 50 years later, there were 1,000 printing presses. Now, prior to the printing press, in the time of the Rishonim, the total output in the world was about, that's a printing error. It was hundreds of thousands for all countries in a century. So there were several 100,000 manuscripts were copied per century in the world. That's up till 1440, right? What happened after 1440? 100 years after the press, Italy, just one little country, in 50 years, not a century, but 50 years, produced 40 million books. So what's happening? Two things are happening. There's a proliferation, an increase in the amount of books that are printed, and guess what's happening to the price of books? Drop significantly. In the 17th century, so about 300 years after the printing press, 500 million books are printed in Europe, right? So from 100,000 in a century to 500 million in a century. Demand soars, prices plummet, which makes demand soar more, and there's been a 340-fold decrease in the price of books from 1440 till today. And that's not counting ebooks, which are even much, much cheaper. Right. So there's an example of a technology. We're seeing two things happen. It's becoming ubiquitous. It's changing the whole way that people work. Do you know that the church purposely kept people ignorant? Jews, a lot of those 100,000 manuscripts that were produced between 1440 were Hebrew manuscripts. They were Jewish, man. We always had book. We were the people of the book. But in the rest of the world, there was a concerted effort by the church to keep most people ignorant, unable to read, so that the power could reside with the priestly, with the clergy. And that meant that with what Gutenberg did is he basically destroyed that power imbalance. And he said, now anybody who can read for a lot less money than buying a handwritten manuscript, you can actually gain that knowledge. So that's what happened with that technology. Other technologies, so Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone in 1876. By 1900, so just 24 years later, there's 600,000 telephones in the United States, right? By 1910, just 10 years later, there's 5.8 million telephones in the United States. And today, there are more phones in the United States than there are people in the United States, by far, okay? And the same thing happened with TV sets. In the 1950s, a TV set cost about $1,000. And today, if we would get that level of unsophisticated TV set, it would cost us $8, right? But of course, our televisions cost more just because they have much more technology in it. But again, two things are happening: proliferation and price drop, right? So both of those things happen whenever there's technology. And look, it's happening faster. Look how long it took, hundreds of years, centuries, for the printing press to have this, to have the impact it had. Look how quickly this is starting to go now. Okay. So let me tell you about something that happened in 2012. In 2012, there was the Deep Q network, and it played this game. I don't know if anybody's old enough in the room to remember the Atari Breakout game, that game. So you have basically a paddle at the bottom, and you move the paddle with a controller, and a ball comes, and if it hits there, it will go there. If it hits a brick, the brick disappears, right? Know this game? Huh? Pong, yeah. So it's called, on the Atari, it was called Breakout, I believe. So this company taught an artificial intelligence how to play the game. But all it taught it was the rules of the game. Taught the artificial intelligence how to play this game. And it started playing, and at first it was really bad, like me. But then as it played, like many teenagers did at the time, it got more and more adept at it. And then, something truly amazing. It figured out all on its own, it was not taught this, there was nothing in the rules that we needed to understand this. It figured a trick. The trick was, it focused its attention on only one column, and it only attacked that single column so that the ball would go behind the wall, and then it would go bing, 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 and it would very quickly eliminate all the bricks on the top. Hitting a brick, going up, hitting a brick, going up, and it didn't have to do anything. It did it for it. It learned how to do that, and they were blown away. That was amazing, right? In 2015, the same company created a product called AlphaGo. So there's this Korean game, East Asian game called Go. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. And it basically has these white and black balls, and if you surround your opponent's balls with a certain color, the color gets eliminated from the board. It's a pretty simple game, but it's extremely complex. There's people who've played, who are true masters at this game. And so they wanted to see if they could teach an artificial intelligence to beat a Go master from Korea, right? So all they did is they showed the artificial intelligence 150,000 games. And then they let it go, they let it play itself, so it played itself millions and millions of times, and it figured out strategies and everything, and then they went to Korea and it started playing the world champion of Go in the world. And Move 37, everybody was watching it. There were commentators on it. It's a big sport. It's like chess, but different. And the commentator said, "Ooh, Move 37 was a mistake. The AI had made a mistake, and it's going to lose now." But it won. It won, and that 37, move number 37, created a new strategy that in thousands of years, probably, of playing this game, no human being had thought of that strategy. And the AI thought of it. The AI won 4-1, 4 games to 1, and totally redefined AI. That was in 2015, right? Now, so all AI in the 2010s used what was called supervised learning. So basically a human being is helping it learn. But now, the large language models that they use today doesn't use supervised learning. They can train on messy, raw data. So basically what they're doing is they're pushing these things onto every email that's ever been written, the entire Wikipedia, every single website that you could imagine, every YouTube video, right? There are 500 hours of YouTube video uploaded every single second of every single day, okay? And they took the transcripts of every single one of the YouTube videos and they trained the AI on that. So the AI is ingesting incredible amounts of information, way beyond what any human brain would ever be able to ingest in a lifetime. So let's just tease this out. The average person reads, let's say, 200 words per minute. So if a person would read every single day of their life for 80 years, they would read 8 billion words. But of course, nobody could do that because you can't read 24/7 every single day, 200 words every single minute. But if you could, you would read 8 billion words, okay? That is 6 orders of magnitude less than what a model can train in 1 month. So the model can train in 1 month trillion, well, I mean, let's talk real figures over here. So it started off, the models had hundreds of millions of parameters, then they went to billions of parameters. There's now Alibaba, which is a Chinese company that has claimed 10 trillion parameters. And the Google Palm, to train Google Palm, if you would take a drop of water, for every flop, a flop is called a floating point operation. It's kind of what it does when it's learning. If you take it for every flop, you would be able to fill the Pacific Ocean with the drops of water that they took to train Palm for Google. But if you think that's amazing, watch this. A petaflop, okay, is the following. Imagine 1 billion people. Each of those 1 billion people is holding 1 million calculators. And they've put some really complex multiplication problem into the calculator. The billion people times 1 million calculators all press the equal at exactly the same moment. That's a petaflop. That's 1 petaflop. Now, DQN, the one that played the Atari breakout game, had 2 petaflops of data. Okay? Today, models have 10 billion. So ChatGPT has 10 billion petaflops of data. Okay? And remember when I started this story way back in 2012? Right? Took a lot less to get to this point in time. So it's speeding up and it's getting cheaper. DQN to play that breakout game cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Google paid for it, hundreds of millions of dollars. Today, you could run a chat agent for pennies a day. So the price is coming down and it's becoming very ubiquitous. I'll take one industry of thousands, and I'll tell you about this industry. There are 5 million people in the United States of America today who earn their livelihood by driving a vehicle of some description. They're either driving a truck or they're driving a taxi. 5 million Americans make their entire income from driving. In the next few years, self-driving cars will be much safer than human beings could ever be. They won't need to sleep, take vacations, they won't belong to unions, they will be able to work 24/7, and 5 million Americans will lose their job instantly. And these are not people necessarily that are going to become engineers for Google on their AI. These are people who are going to lose their job and they're going to really struggle to find another job. And that's one industry. I can mention many other industries, and the same story will apply. Anesthesiologists, people who are very, very highly paid doctors that do amazing work. One of the most dangerous parts of an operation is the anesthetic that's administered to the patient. But AI today could look at data points, thousands and thousands of data points instantaneously, much better than a human being could. And the AI never has a bad night's sleep, never argues with their spouse, never comes to work in a bad mood. The AI will perfectly monitor and administer anesthetics to a patient in an operation room. So any anesthesiologists in the room, start brushing up your resumes. And I can go again on and on. The point I want to make is, this should make us very afraid. And there are a lot of people who are very afraid of AI and what it's going to do. I think from a bitachon lens, there is no reason to fear whatsoever. Let me go back and show you another speak for a moment about another technology, and that's the gramophone, the record player. Anyone? So there's a ChatGPT generated image of a gramophone, of course. And so when the gramophone was invented, there was this gentleman, and he wrote an article, I think it was like 1904, 1906, something like that. His name was John Philip Sousa. He was actually quite an amazing person. He composed music for marching bands, amongst many other things. And he wrote an article when the gramophone was invented and became ubiquitous. And look what he said. He said, musicians are going to lose their jobs because you could have a whole symphony orchestra in your living room. Why would we need to hire musicians to play music anymore? So he was very concerned, and he became very active in the music union because he said that this technology is going to mean that musicians are going to lose their parnassa. I don't think he said parnassa, but I think that's what he meant. So then he said, in the same article, something even worse. He said, listen to this. He said, it is the end of humanity. Why is it the end of humanity? Because mothers have sung their children to sleep for millennia. And now it is much easier to just turn on the gramophone and let that play a lullaby to the children and put them to sleep. And so that beautiful connection between mother and child is now irreparably broken because of this new technology. Doesn't it sound familiar? So we know what happened. The gramophone did not put musicians out of business. It made musicians extremely successful. And it didn't destroy humanity, because there's still mothers, even today, in the world of the gramophone, that put their children to sleep. When my son was 7 years old, ChatGPT started talking. So we put him down in front of ChatGPT, and I said to him, ask it a question. So he said, what makes spiders stick on the wall? Right? I don't know where that came from, but he was like, what makes spiders stick on the wall? And ChatGPT instantly recognized that it's talking to a child, right? It lowered its level to his level, and they had a 1.5 hour conversation about spiders and space and nightmares, going to sleep, and all sorts of things. It was absolutely fascinating. My wife and I were watching, and it's fascinating. So maybe the gramophone didn't destroy bedtime, but maybe ChatGPT will, I don't know, or maybe not. And this is the point. So often, there have been, they're called Luddites, they actually have a name. There's been people who have been anti-technology because of the fear that they have feared that the technology is going to bring changes. And you know what happens in each case of all these technologies that would be the ruin of us? The Industrial Revolution, the book printing, the AI now. You know what happens in every case? God still runs the world. And in every case, the bitachon, those that have bitachon, and perhaps even those that don't, in every case, Hashem does not let the world. You know, there was John Adams, there were people, there were economists who said that if the world would grow over a certain population, it would be the end of humanity. And you know what? The world has 8 times, the population of the world is 8 times the size it was when he said that. And we still have enough food to feed every single man, woman, and child. And there is food. I was speaking to Avrohom, and he's right. He was saying they throw away tons and tons of good food to sustain and support the market. We can feed us 8 billion people. We could feed 1 billion people. And if there were 16 billion people in this world, guess what? God would figure a way to feed them too. And God will figure a way for us to deal with AI and all the wonderful technologies that are coming our way, if we have bitachon. Let me tell you about the Bronx Zoo. The Bronx Zoo had procured a rare Siberian tiger. And they commissioned a multi-million-dollar habitat for the tiger. And the habitat, it mimicked the tiger's natural environment in Siberia. So I don't know if anybody's ever done a renovation project. There's two things about renovation projects. They come over budget and over time, right? I think that's a pretty consistent law of the universe, that you never get your renovation delivered over time, and the same thing happened here. They spent millions of dollars building this habitat, and they built this amazing habitat, and the tiger arrived on time, but the habitat was delayed. So they put the tiger in a 16-foot nondescript cage. And all day, quite to the consternation of the people, the zoologists and the nature lovers, the tiger walked 16 feet across the cage, and he came to the side of the cage. He turned his powerful body around, and he walked 16 feet in the other direction. And then when he hit the bars on the other side, he turned his body around, and he walked in the other direction, and he paced back and forth and backward and forth for all the time that they were waiting for the habitat to be completed. Then, thank God, finally, it was completed. And so they released the tiger into this habitat, and they were all excited. There were journalists there. Everybody was excited. What's the tiger going to do first? Is it going to explore the majestic waterfall that they built for it? Would it climb one of the mountains? What would it do first? So they release it into this habitat, this beautiful habitat. And the tiger walks 16 feet in this direction. He comes to an abrupt halt. He turns his body around. He walks 16 feet in this direction. For you see, although there was no more bars, physical bars, in his head, he was still in a 16-foot cage. And I think if you don't have bitachon, it's so easy to trap yourself in a 16-foot cage. To trap yourself in a cage of your own making. It's your own imagination that creates this cage. And the only way to break out of the cage, to have the courage to take the step beyond that 16 foot, is when you know 100% that Hashem has your back. Okay. So the Japanese eat very little fat, and they have less heart attacks than Americans and the British. But the French eat a lot of fat, and they also have less heart attacks than the Americans and the British. Now, the Japanese don't drink red wine, and they have less heart attacks than the Americans and the British. But the Italians drink copious amounts of red wine, and they have less heart attacks than the Americans and the British. So the conclusion is, eat whatever you want. It's English that kills you. So I'm coming to a conclusion here. But I want it to be an accurate conclusion. And so therefore, I'm going to take some of the concepts that we've been learning together on this amazing journey that we've been on over the last week. And I'm going to try and work with you to come up with practical, implementable actions that we could take when we part from each other, for you to make a lot of these ideas, for us together, because I'm going to try as well, to make a lot of these ideas, to make them practical and real and integrate them into our lives. So the first idea that I spoke about over several of the sessions that we were in is to embrace radical responsibility. What do I mean by embracing radical responsibility? It's easy to blame circumstances and people and governments and epidemics and fill in the blank, whatever you want, for the negative things that are happening in our lives. But the reality is that empowerment begins when you own your choices. That's what you're in control of. You can choose how you are going to react, what things you're going to do within your own life. You cannot control world politics, epidemics. That's not within your control. But what is within your control is the things that you can do within yourself. Developing your bitachon, reaching out to other people and helping them. These are things that you can use to reclaim your power. So radical responsibility means you take full responsibility for your life and you reclaim the power that you've given as part of victim mentality to other people. So remember, we learned, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? What do we say? We say, what can I learn from this? Madea, lema, what's the purpose, right? And that is all about radical responsibility. So every small action that you take, you might think it's small. Every mitzvah that you do, every coin that you put into a pushka, you might think that that is very small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but we learned here, and we learn in Hasidus, that those little things are seeds that grow to mighty oak trees. Those little things that we think are little and insignificant can have a huge, disproportionate impact on the world, and it's up to you. No one else is going to do it, because if somebody else would have done it, Hashem would have made you. What you need to accomplish in this world, only you can do, nobody else can. The next thing I want to ask you is to take consistent action. So the gap between where you are and where you want to be is bridged by action. Right? The Torah tells us, Ma'aser Ha'ikar. The Rebbe stressed it all the time. The most important thing is to take action. Not to leave inspired and leave it at that, but to leave inspired and to implement that as part of your daily routine. So transformation is not a one-time event. It is the result of consistent efforts over and over again. That's why we have to daven 3 times a day. We just don't get it the first time. So we need a reminder the second time, and then we need a reminder the third time. And we need to do that for 120 years. And it's the daily rituals and mitzvahs, the actions that we do that reinforce the idea of bitachon and all of the benefits of bitachon. So it's important to set clear goals, actionable goals, to follow, as the Rebbe told somebody, to follow the Shulchan Aruch in your daily life. I've told many people, follow the Shulchan Aruch in your daily life. That is our goal, and it is manageable, and we can do it, and we've discussed that at length. Perfection isn't the goal, though. We are human, and goals are milestones, and they track progress, and that's the important part, is to track progress. But don't feel bad if you don't succeed perfectly every single time. I would also say that cultivate a growth mindset, which is related to what we just said. So you see failures. A growth mindset means you see failures as opportunities. Remember the E in the peace system? You see all of those failures, all of those disappointments as opportunities to grow and as opportunities to build resilience, etc. You learn systematically about bitachon. Growth mindset is about systematic learning. So there's amazing resources today on Shara Bitachon online, Chassidus online. Learn, learn, learn. That is part of a growth mindset. A person who has a fixed mindset, the opposite of a growth mindset, thinks that they cannot learn new things. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Have you ever heard that? That's a fixed mindset speaking. We believe in growth mindset. You can always do tshuva, you can always return, come back to where you need to be, you can always learn, and you can always grow. Every day, you should aim to be 1% better in your bitachon than you were the day before, because these small improvements compound over time. The next thing I would say is embrace financial discipline. And what that means from a bitachon perspective is, first of all, not to get into debt over consumer, because you're consuming things. So the Torah is very against getting into debt. And let me tell you, I worked for the last 3.5 years for the banking industry, and they sit, the brightest people in the world, they sit day in and day out thinking how they can trick you through your credit cards, etc., into getting more in debt. And you have to make sure that you resist bad debt. There's good debt, but you resist bad debt as much as possible. But we're not avoiding debt. The Torah is not telling us to avoid debt, and the Torah is not, and we're not trying to accumulate wealth just for the fact that we're accumulating wealth. As we learned the final E in the peace system, it's all about the generosity, because giving back, explained, creates a sense of purpose. And again, we got to get into the habit of daily giving if we're not already in that habit. Tzedakah is the ultimate expression of bitachon. It's taking the money that you could use to buy food to keep body and soul together, as it explains in Tanya, and giving that away is the ultimate expression of bitachon. You're giving away your very life because you know that Hashem will instantly replace it. So tzedakah is very connected with bitachon. Give more, and if you think that's the maximum you give a little bit more, and the bitachon will kick in. Next, stepping out of your comfort zone. This is a really important thing. Remember the Siberian tiger, right? The Siberian tiger was in his comfort zone. He was pacing back and forwards. He thought that he couldn't break out, but the greatest breakthroughs come when we break out of our comfort zones. You know how many people have told me, I think, Rabbi, I'm ready to... I remember this one guy, he was getting closer to Yiddishkeit through me, and by himself, not through me, but I was his first contact with, from Yidden. And he got to a point where he was wearing tzitzis. By the way, I encourage this, but not a yarmulke. And the reason is because he could tuck his tzitzis in, but when he went to work, he was embarrassed to wear a yarmulke. And that was his limit. He thought, I cannot wear a yarmulke. That's it. I can wear tzitzis because I can tuck it in. It's a deraisa, it's wonderful, amazing that he's wearing tzitzis, but a yarmulke I'm not ready for. When he came home from work, he put in his yarmulke immediately, but in work, he could not wear a yarmulke. He thought that was the 16-foot bar, right? Today he's a frum yid. Of course he wears a yarmulke. But it was really hard for him to step out of that 16 feet imaginary bars that he created for himself, that prison that he created for himself. And we all do it. We all have something. So I have no problem wearing a yarmulke at work, but I have other problems, trust me. And there's things like, well, that I can't do, right? That is beyond my limitation. No such thing. If the Torah demands it from us, we can do it. And that is, we just have to step out of our comfort zone. Not comfortable, but when we take those risks, those spiritual risks, we are able to break through those imaginary boundaries, and we see that we actually can do it, and we could have done it all the time. Practice gratitude daily. So we spoke about the A in the P system. Gratitude is a powerful tool. It shifts from being in your anxiety to helping other people. It is full of, it creates a feeling of contentment, of purpose, and of abundance, and it fosters resilience, as we discussed. So make gratitude a daily habit. You might want to keep a journal next to your bed. When you wake up in the morning, before you go to sleep at night, whatever works best for you, write 3 to 5 to 10 to 20, depending on how much of an overachiever you are, things that you're grateful for every single day. And try to use things that are new, that you haven't used in the past, and you will start seeing how many blessings are truly in your life. Oh, okay. We've run out of time before we ran out of content, but I'll end with this. I'll jump to the end. So the Rambam, at the beginning of his Mishnah Torah, he gives a beautiful description of the future. And he says that when Mashiach comes, there will not be hunger in the world, there won't be jealousy, there won't be competitiveness, that will all be eliminated, all those scourges. And property and produce and assets will be so abundant that they will be meaningless. They'll be like dust and earth. And when we think about all these incredible technologies, we think about my friend who owns hundreds of thousands of hectares of farmland, and he only has 3 employees. And they're producing all this food. And people who have, when we think of AI and how much AI can and will improve our lives medically, financially, in terms of mental health, all these incredible technologies that Hashem has allowed into the world at this time. So it's not so far-fetched to think that all of our needs will be taken care of perfectly. And when those needs are taken care of, we will have the time, the wherewithal, the calm, the serenity, the bitachon, to be able to know that everything is absolutely taken care of. And when everything is absolutely taken care of for us, then we will know that we will be able to reorient ourselves, to look towards being more spiritual, to growing, to learning Hasidus, the inner secrets of Torah, and growing and getting close to Hashem. That will be the totality of what we will be about when Mashiach comes. And we can see it. We see it with these amazing technological advancements that we're there. We're on the threshold. So obviously, maybe it needs just a little bit more bitachon in that ultimate era of blessing, the era of Mashiach, and Hashem will open our eyes and reveal that we live in this marvelous, beautiful, safe, secure, bitachon-filled world right now. Amen.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, I'd like to now just give a vote of thanks, first and foremost, all of those who gave the shiurim during this past week. And our major sponsor, Melbourne Office Supply, and other sponsors that we had, Dr. Gelman, Dr. Gray, plus others. And particularly, I'd like to thank those who gave the shiurim, which means that they had to spend time preparing the shiurim and delivering them. And they are, first of all, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Gordon, who throughout the year is still giving shiurim about the kollel, and they are available on Zoom, and the weekly email goes out and announces. And also Rabbi Leon Bro, who also gives a weekly shiur on Zoom every week on behalf of the kollel, and they can be therefore very easily accessed. Rabbi David Leib Shmurling, Rabbi Shalom Dickstein, Rabbi Menachem Safran, Rabbi Goldstein, and Rabbi Ari Schechter. I'd like to give a very, very, very big thank you to Rabbi Yosef Bonder, who has done an outstanding job, literally single-handedly, in the daily preparations and the lead-up preparations for this year's Yachikala. Hashem bless him, his wife, all the prophets, the Gashim Subruchis, Kam Yachad, B'Tei Vanida Vanigla. And now I'd like to give a very special vote of thanks to our Scotland residents, Rabbi Avrohom Jacks, came all the way from Toronto. And also thank you to his Rebbetzin, who gave him permission to come over here. And all of the brachas and all of the good things that you tell us comes our way when we have the bitachon that should come your way, because I know you have bitachon. You came here all this way to Australia. Hashem should bless you and your family with all the brachas. You should merit to continue to disseminate Torah and Hatzlacha in your forthcoming book. And as it says, called peace. Peace in Hebrew is Shalom. Shalom is the last word of the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Hashem Yevorech es Amay Vashalom, where there the Mishnah concludes that Hashem, the only vessel for blessing that Hashem has made, is the blessing of peace. And what's HaKadosh Baruch Hu Keli Machzik Bracha L'Yisrael Elo HaSholem. It's only Sholem, peace. Shenema Hashem Le'ezlam V'yitein Hashem gave strength to His people, and that strength is the strength of Torah, that which Torah gives us. And Hashem Yivarech, Hashem will bless it. How many people Sholem, with peace, as is explained in Rashi and Chumash in Parashat Chukoseh. But I'd also like to point out that the commentators say over there that Sholem, the ultimate peace and the ultimate blessing is Mashiach, as Rabbi Jax just mentioned. And it's one of the names of Mashiach is Sholem, the Ein Perseach Ela B'Sholem. So we should have that peace, and that Sholem should materialize before our very eyes immediately. Last but not least, I want to thank every single participant, because it's not for the participants, so that we wouldn't have the program. And I conclude with the Rebbe's bracha, the Rebbe's very strong bracha, which the Rebbe gave to the Yachakal program many years ago. He gave a bracha that we should have outstanding success, and also mentioned the Godel Schus Talmud Torah the Rabbi. Great is the merit of communal Torah learning, and we should remember this throughout the entire year. Make available of all the various shurim that the Kollel has, and all the other moises, the institutions of the Yeshiva Center provide for the community. And learning Torah not only on your own, but together with others, that's what the Rebbe is saying. Is great is the schus, is the merit of communal Torah learning. May this merit stand each and every one of you and all of us together in good stead in all aspects, in health, and wealth, and nachas, and kol tuv selo. So I wish you all the last day and a half of Hanukkah at the Kodesh. And just one other thing, Rabbi Jackson was talking about Shara. We're talking, of course, there are various publications. There is the Chabad Kohos publication, which is available here, and that's the one that I recommend. The Shara B'Tochen published by Kohos. And another thing this is the larger version. You can get it in small also. This was published by Kohos, which is the Chabad, the Lubavitch publishing house. But also I mentioned a few times the Rebbe's Sikha, the Rebbe's talk and discussion, a very powerful one, most powerful one on B'tochen, on trust, and it's on the Parsha of Shmois in volume 36 of Likutei Sichos, and somebody showed me yesterday that you can actually get the Sikha in Hebrew and in English online. So if you go online and you put in, it's on Rebbe.org, which is part of Chabad.org, without fear and worry, that's what it's called, without fear and worry. It's in Pashas Shemot, so Shemot, they have it in there. But yeah, if you put in Rebbe Sikha, without fear and worry, you will get the original Hebrew with the English translation, with all of the footnotes. That's enough food for us to learn about B'tochen. Will take you, the Rebbe said about learning Shah B'tochen, not to learn it once, twice, 3 times. This Sikha you could learn it 10 times or 30 times. You should all be blessed. As somebody says, don't worry, don't think about how stressed you are, but how blessed you are. We should see the blessings openly. All the best.